I'm finally getting back around to working on the four-wheeler. Last time we did the tires, so today, brakes, because before I do any test ride, I really want to have brakes. So, in this bucket down here is the majority of the brake stuff. This is the old master cylinder, always been broken for the entire time I had it. On the end of this comes a manifold block, which I'm going to see if I can keep that. And then off of that, tease the rear brake caliper. This guy has been causing me massive pain. I don't trust it. Underneath, there's all this scraping that came from the old brake rotor. It looks like these pads have a little bit of life left on it, but honestly, I don't trust them. And whenever I look online for new brake, I find like for $15, a full set of front and rear brake pads. So I'm just going to replace those. Finding these online used is still really high price. I have not been able to find one that has the manual brake in the rear as well as the hydraulic. Now the front is a much better story. This is the connector that would go to that manifold block, goes through some flex tubing down to here into this connector right here, and this, while it has corrosion on it, it doesn't look terribly bad. It doesn't move really smoothly in the housing, the bracket. So this, the floating part of this is a little bit stiff. So I'll have to take apart this, clean this all out. There's absolutely no brake pad left on either of these. Good thing we're ordering new of that. Left and right front is $36 total. So I'm gonna open this up, see how bad it is on the inside, how much effort it is gonna clean it. Down here at the bottom is the rotors. This is one of the front rotors. There's an identical one that goes to the other side. This one looks fine. The new ones have holes drilled out on them, but honestly, this should be fine. I'm sure with a wire brush, this could get a lot better. The rear brake rotor has massive rust on it. But do you see these 8 holes? Yeah, those should have rivets in, not screws, rivets, that has a center hub that has a spline. This is missing that center spline. I've never had it. The four-wheeler did not come with it. So I have to order a new one of these. I just did yesterday for $40. You can see that little spline shaft right there. That's where the rear brake rotor goes onto, and that needs to slip on it. And that rear spline is a floating, as it floats on that spline. And then up there is the 2 mounts for that brake caliper with both screws stripped out inside of them, so that'll be fun to get out. On the front, the rotor is attached to this hub back here, and these are the mounts for the brake calipers. Since this hub is flipped left to right, the caliper is going to be in the front and not the rear. That shouldn't really cause us any issues, I hope. As you may have noticed, this is only one brake caliper. The other one is right here, and I've already taken it apart. Here is the piston that goes in there, the floating mount that's supposed to go in there, the rubber pieces, the bleed screw, one of the set screws that holds this guy actually in there. That's all been removed. Right there, I at first thought, oh no, I broke the seal. No, that's just like mud that somehow got in there, or somehow really congealed brake fluid. All the brake fluid that's been coming out of this has been pitch black. Not what I was hoping for, but not terribly unexpected. But yeah, there's like chunks of the stuff in there. So once I get all that chunks out, I'm going to take out the rear seal, inspect that, clean that out. This came out actually not that bad. Really skinny screwdriver goes right in the back, and you can just kind of push it out. So when you have it lined up, it should just push right out like that. I'm going to get this cleaned up. I'll see how bad it is, and I'll cut to that. So this is the caliper I just showed you, and here's the cleaned one right here. I had to take a wire brush, scrub all of like the mud and stuff off of it, and then I put it through an ultrasonic cleaner. I couldn't get exactly everything out of there, but for the majority I got it. And then for the last little bit of really caked on like concrete like mud, tiny little wire brush just to clean up the back and anything you can see from the outside of the four-wheeler. All the inside looks really clean now. The rubber O-rings do not show any signs of cracking, and so that's fantastic. The bleed screw looks really good. Set screw looks fine. The boots are not in the greatest of condition, but they do stay on there. They do click over that little lip right there. I wire brushed the mount, and well, that just fits in there just like that. I'm sure with a little bit of grease, that would be a lot more smooth. I think that will work out just fine. So I'm going to reassemble this, and we can take a look how that looks. So I'd say that came out really nice. Look at that. I don't have the new brake pads yet, so I haven't installed those. But you can see on the old ones, like I said, there's like no pad left on that bottom one at all. It's absolutely gone. So I would say, I think I'm going to reuse these. The seals on them were actually really quite good. I mean, sure, it doesn't look brand new, but it's a 96, right? It's a 1996 four-wheeler. These are the original brakes, I'm pretty sure. It's good enough. I will have to get some new brake line because I don't trust this rusty stuff where the flange won't even spin. So yeah, so now I'm gonna get to cleaning this one, and we'll jump to that. I just pulled the piston out. Same method, push this through. You can see, what is this junk? This is that muddy, congealed brake fluid. Probably is mud, you know? That is super gross, kind of bleh, just like that. But yeah, so I will continue cleaning all that nasty junk up. So, as you can see, both calipers look really nice and clean, even the bottoms of them, very shiny. So, now that these are all good and shiny, I need to work on the third caliper, because there's two in the front, left and right, and there's only one in the rear though. And here is the one that goes to the rear. There is damage on here, as you can see, all that grinding. No idea why that's there. The condition of the outside of this looks about the same as these originally did, as you can see, quite a big difference. To get this off though, I managed to get the little manifold block off as well, so I'm also going to clean this. The front master cylinder, I can't use this because I'm switching from hand throttle to pedal, so I'm going to have to get a new master cylinder, so let's not worry about that. So all I need to worry about is, since I can't easily find any one of these, I do have to be careful trying to fix this one. So I'll take this apart and see how that goes. So here's the bare frame of the rear brake caliper. Here's those brake pads, piston. Here's these little slide rods, which took me a quick minute to figure out how they got in there. And those go in there like that, and I thought they were screwed in, so I was looking, on the other side for a screw. But no, you have to reach in there with a pair of needle nose and then pull those up, because those slide out. That's to make sure those pins stay in there. Is that what that bracket is for? And then there's this little bracket that I'm pretty sure is to keep the brake pads pushed upwards. And then what I really want to show you, besides the two seals that are in there that I haven't checked yet, is all of that gunk in there. Just get all that gunk out of there. And there's a bunch of it, and it's sludgy, and it's not wanting to come out. So this will have a fun time through the ultrasonic. So I'm going to keep cleaning this, and yeah, it's built a little bit differently than I thought. So there is a huge dilemma now. Obviously you can see this one is cleaned up really well, nice and shiny. I am really proud that I got that spring plate really nice and shiny. This guy will go down there. I also got that one really rusty bracket really cleaned up, blah blah blah. That's all cleaned up. If you notice, this part right here is not, and that's the part that goes on the end here. And the reason why is it turns out the screw holding it in is left-hand thread. Guess how I found out? By not trying to take it out like a left-hand thread. Yeah, so I didn't know that, clearly. And well, that was the sole screw for holding all the physical brake together. So this screw went through this washer, through this bracket right here. This bracket went onto that hole right there that sits on like that. There is this part that's inside this housing, and then there is the end of where the thread went. There's also this nut that went in there, but ignore that for a second. And that slipped on right in there like that. And then this is a hole with those two screws went onto those two side holes, and this together went like that. So to keep all this together was that one screw, and I wanted to clean up all of this, so I tried to take it out, and clearly that didn't work. So I'm gonna have to try and find this screw, and this turns out to be 1/4 inch by 28 threads per inch left-hand thread, and it's also 1 1/4 inches long. I've had a pain trying to find this screw. The closest screw that I can find to this is either $43 or a screw that is slightly short that is used to hold DeWalt chucks together. I do want a manual rear brake as well as the hydraulic one. Obviously the hydraulic will still work with some modifications I'll mention here in a second, but I really do want to keep this. So I'll try and see if I can find this screw. If I can't, this is the idea. Remove the idea of this, and then there's two O-rings in here. So all I really need is this piece as a plug. I'm going to keep the spring on there just to show you. So that slots in there like that. And then since there's going to be pressure in here pushing the piston out, this is also going to be trying to be pushed out. So all I really need is some kind of bracket that keeps that from popping out. And that would be really, really simple. Obviously I'd need some different size plate and, well, screw it down like that, and that'll keep this thing from popping out. That's going to be my backup plan. But for the moment, otherwise, I'm going to reassemble the rest of this. Yeah, this is all back together, except for obviously the manual brake, piston's in, retaining plate is in, so those little rods stay in there. When I get all the new brakes, I'll put them in. I'll either have the plate or have fixed the manual way, but that's for later me. Started looking for master cylinders that would fit, the current brake lines, because this is 7/16 by 24 brake line, so I figured I was going to get some more of this. Turns out to get both front new brake lines for the four-wheeler is $15. To get the rear brake line is like $6. This is for the front master cylinder. I didn't realize that it goes from the 7/16 to a 10 mil banjo bolt, and this is also $6. $6 online. So for like 30 bucks-ish, I got all new brake lines for the entire thing. Figured, you know, that was necessary. This manifold block here is like 20 bucks online, but this seems pretty good. Just clean it up a little bit, you know, get some of that stuff off of the brass. Since I'm not using a, you know, hand actuated master cylinder, I needed a foot pedal actuated master cylinder. So those are about $14 online, one that, you know, fit 10 mil banjo bolt. And then I remembered, I found the parts for the Suzuki Bandit, and well, look at that, master cylinder for the rear brake. This hopefully should be enough because the caliper for the Bandit is a lot bigger than these 3 calipers. So hopefully overall it should be within the acceptable range. This already has all of like the linkage mechanism for getting this all to work right. So somehow I just need to adapt this frame right here to fit like this position, so you know you can push the pedal down versus how it usually is in the bike, which is I believe like this on the right hand side. So flip this around a little bit. Tank was completely empty, but I can't get the screw out because the captive nut is stuck in there. And then I remembered Suzuki GS550E, my bike that I daily, had this original master cylinder. Now I didn't replace this, the guy I got it from replaced it. This also took a 10 mil banjo bolt, but this reservoir is good. I don't trust this because it seems to be leaking everywhere on it. So I'm just gonna detach this from here or up here and put it on instead of this reservoir right here. That way so I can keep the good reservoir from there and use the newer master cylinder. So that fixes the brake issue. So now I should have all the brake stuff on order. So whenever that gets here, I can start doing all that. So instead now I have to work on the next step, which is these. These are the front rotors. They're covered in rust. I already cleaned them up pretty good before, but I didn't wire brush them. So it is time to do that. And we'll see how shiny we can get these. If I can't get them shiny enough, I'll have to get, you know, new ones. But honestly, there's not that much wear on them. They're just old. So let me clean these up real quick. Oh, I have to take my dust mask off because look at all of this rust. Like obviously this looks a lot better. That's, you know, one of them. Here's the other one. I've done both sides now. Clear difference. Bunch of pitting around it. There's definitely, you can see a groove that goes around. A slight lip right here. Slight. Don't really know how much that matters. It's pretty smooth though. Bunch of pitting. This is supposed to be really low budget, so I'm not going to order new ones of these yet, at least. I'm going to roll with these. I'm going to finish cleaning up that one. Take off my dust mask for a very short period of time. Still iron filings in the air, but yeah, that's great. Anyway, this came out decent. Still a lot of pitting. Actually, I think that was the first one. Here's the second. Yeah, still some pitting. There's a groove on the outside of this one. You don't really feel it, but you can definitely see it, obviously. I don't really know how much that's going to matter. So I'm going to roll with these for now and clean up that mess. So in order to get the brakes on, I have a few issues. So one, so the rotor and caliper both fit in the here. Usually the caliper sits on the back side, but since I swapped the hubs, the caliper sits actually right about right here. Since I put these boots on, remember I replaced these boots in a previous video on these front axles, I didn't use the right tool that actually crimps on the boot because I didn't have the right tool for the style of clamp that came with these. I have since gotten new clamps and the correct tool to install the boots. In order to get those axles out so I can fix the boot, I have to basically undo the front steering, I have to undo ball joint or take out the top so I can swivel this all out. But to get the spindle out of the hub, I basically have to take apart the hub, disassemble it all, blah, 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 blah. But that's also necessary to take off the hub because for some reason, the rotor attaches to the back of the hub. So basically I have to disassemble both sides and to get this all up in jacks and everything. So I'll do that real quick. As you can see, this boot here has actually been twisted because this has been catching on the inside of the spindle, or in the inside of the hub, excuse me. Well, it's just not tight enough, and clearly it's leaking out there and here. This one's actually tight enough that it's staying on, but it should be removed. It's not nearly tight enough. So I got a really cheap kit that includes both different types of tools and a bunch of the clamps, and I am going to replace both of them just because. So I'm going to need two of those. All right, and the right tool, obviously. So let's get these old ones off. Okay, yep, it should not be able to come off that easily. So, yep. So I'm going to clean this edge right here and then try and put the new one on. So obviously I don't want to try and get something greasy and somewhere that I'm trying to not move. That is on there as tight as I'm going to get it. I'm going to get that aligned in the groove, and I think I just put it on around that little clip there and then I just clamp. I'm going to put this in the vise and crimp that just because it is so rolly. Well, these must be cheap clamps because that just broke off. So Guess I'm trying another one. So they both have new clamps on them. I am not proud of this clamp in particular. This is the one I did right after I broke the first clamp. The first clamp, I have no idea why it broke. Absolutely no idea. The rest of them, I did the exact same thing on, and they did exactly what they should have. I will say this one is different than the rest of them, and it's because I cut these 3 to the proper length, you know, given a little bit of extra. This has the full coil on it, and I think just when I grip down on it, it just can't grip enough, and you can see I can still slide that around. So I think I'm actually going to cut this one off and do this one again, because this guy, there's no movement. This one, no movement. This one, I can't slip that off if I tried. This one, yeah, I'm barely pushing at that and that's moving. I got that crimp down manually, and then I put in the vise to get it really nice and flush, because the tolerance in the hub is really small. So I have to get that as flush as I can. These ones don't really matter. They're on there good enough. But yeah, this one I think is protruding just too high. And yeah, it's just not on there well enough. And there, just like that. Honestly, I did that in under 2 minutes. Here is the extra length that I cut off. Once I cut that off, I can just kind of push this together. I don't need to pull it with the needle nose at all, like I was doing before. You get it really tight. You don't need to do that. You just kind of pinch it like this until it clicks down. You hold it down. And like I said, you just kind of do that with it. And then get that as far as you can go, and then I just put this in the vise, clamp it like this, push it really good and tight until this thing is nice and flat down. Before, when I did this, I could hear air escape. Now, you can see the boot just expand. So does this one. So I know air is not leaking in and out of it. So, that's great. But yep, they're back together, so now time to get this back in. So now it's just the reverse process of getting these back in there. The same way I got them out, basically. But I do have to remember, there is a hole here, and I have to line it up with the hole on the differential. Oh, right. Putting the bearings in would be a great idea. So the front right and left rotors are on. The calipers are yet to go on, but I can't put these on until I get the new brake pads and brake lines to be given at that. So one quick time skip later. So I got a little bit bored of waiting, so I grabbed out some of this wood that I had in the garage, and I need to make some kind of pedal box because, well, this is the drive shaft to the front differential that's under there. So somehow I need to make sure that this is, you know, protected from your legs. You don't stand on this, you know, it sucks your leg under somehow, you know, your shoe or whatnot. On the left-hand side of the engine, right here, I reattached the clutch cover. That way so I could get the clutch lever. Since this is cable driven, I can actually put this at whatever angle I want. I'll probably mount it in here, something like that. So you can step on the bottom of it. I might, you know, modify the handle, whatnot. I need some way to rest my foot on the bottom down here. And I think I'm going to keep this area this height. Somehow I need to protect mainly just around that drive shaft. I grabbed some of the C-channel that I had and I set it down right there like that, and I thought, actually that's not that bad. Obviously it needs to be a little bit higher so it's not sitting on the drive shaft, but I like that idea. Sadly I don't have enough of it and it's not wide enough to cover that knuckle right there, but I have this 1 1/4, it's either 1 1/4 or 1 1/2 inch angle iron, and I think I can actually do this in 2 whole pieces. So I have a half of it on the right side and half of it on the left hand side where it goes over and down and over and down. I think what I can do is I can bend it around here so I can go over, bend, over, and then bend. Probably gonna skip through a bunch of it just because of how fiddly this is gonna be. It's getting a little bit dark, but you can see I have a piece here and a piece there, and that just kind of fits the angle that drive shaft is going at, and that just kind of sits there-ish like that from top down. You can see it takes up a small amount of area. I can trim it like a little bit smaller. The next step is make sure this all fits up and weld that, and well, I'll jump to then. But here's the pieces welded up. Yeah, this looks terrible because all that is gap welding. So there's a triangle there, triangle there, triangle there, triangle there. That all had to get gap welded, which honestly, that was some pretty good practice. You can see how I definitely struggled over here, and then I got a lot better over here. Yeah, otherwise it's decent. I'll grind it back, and I have test fitted it. It does fit, but I am gonna have to make some standoffs to lift it up just a bit. So I sanded back some of the welds. Yeah, it still looks bad. I don't really care, but you can see that fits over that quite nicely. I'll have to make some standoffs so this fits better. Some spots to bolt it, like maybe like here to here would be a good spot to bolt it. There's already a hole there. And then I can always bolt this part to this frame that I made here. I made some in-between spots bolting through some of this metal here. Now, this rear rotor just came in with the hub. Looks like someone already sandblasted it, which is awesome. If we look over here, this is where the rear rotor goes onto, and that's where the caliper bolts onto. Now, if I put it on like this, which is backwards, I can see that the splines fit, but this is the wrong side. It needs to go on like this, but I can't get it on because the rear shock's on here, which is really weird, at least in my opinion. So I'm gonna have to remove this shock so I can get the rotor on. For now, I need to worry about these broken off screws that are still in the casing here. And there is a decent amount of rust, a little bit of the blowtorch and a little bit of penetrant spray, and I'll see if I can get those out. Well, that was quite an adventure getting that out. So this first bolt here, I ended up having to take the welder out and weld a nut on there, and that snapped off again. And then on the second go, I welded it on, and well, as you can see, I got out that one there. This guy, I did it, and you can see it snapped off, and I did it again. I got some really bad porosity on there, so that broke off immediately on the second one. And it was at that point where the end of the thread was actually too far on the inside, so I'd start welding to the outside of this, so that was bad. So I tried drilling it out and using a bolt extractor. That didn't work at all, and so I just kept drilling it out, bigger and bigger sizes, until I thought I just need to tap this, drill it out, re-tap it. And so I went Harbor Freight, picked up a new tap set because all my taps are metric. So I picked up an SAE because it's 5/16 by 18, I believe. And so when I started tapping it, the first few threads started to unravel, so I could pull that out with a pair of pliers. And then the last bit was really stuck in there, but I realized when I kept on tightening it, on the back side, look at that, drilled out, still threads around it, and it kind of unscrewed from the back side. So I just went and retapped the right and left one, so that's nice and clean. So now the bolts I have that I need to cut down, I just have this laying around, so might as well use it. So that just threads in there nice, and we saved that. In order to get this rotor on there, I need to take the shock off, at least at one point, so I can bend it out of the way. I'm pretty sure the bushings at the top of these are absolutely shot. I'll have to replace it eventually. But yep, that just comes up. That's actually not that bad, but it is annoying that I have to do that. I am very surprised. Really? That just doesn't seem right. There's no bushing here at all. What about the top one? Oh, nope. No, there's not. Okay, yeah, these are definitely blown. I mean, I already knew they were blown before, but it just sells it. Nice. Also, on this side, as you know, I have it jacked up so I could take that tire off, and I realized the tire is tightened down to the hub. That's the hub moving. So, that bearing is completely gone. Well, at least those bearings are around 20 bucks, so hopefully you shouldn't be too worried about that. So now it's time to get back to this. I just got some angle iron, cut it to length, drilled a 5/16 hole, and lowered this down a little bit. And I just marked there and there. That way, so when I put this on here, this holds this at the right height, and now I can drill through this crossbar and bolt this to the crossbar. That way, so that it stops it, left and right, and about how high this needs to be mounted back here. So I'm gonna go weld these two together. So I just finished welding on that tab there, and this tab right here. So I'm sure I'm gonna add more later, but for now, I think this will do. So that one's going to mount back to this bracket back here. That's going to mount to this cross beam right there. I've already marked them, so now I just have to drill them out. There. Now to mark the back one. Okay. Accidentally stepping there. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, it's a bit of an intrusion. It's way less than an intrusion than if the floor is all raised up to here. That'd be really annoying. I think we're gonna clear. I'm gonna move this forward and back and see if you're hitting or not. Good. I don't hear anything. So now that I have this protector in here, it's a lot safer. But now it leaves me some with issues of how the pedals are going to end up working. Here's the clutch pedal. Here is the rear master cylinder from the Bandit, which I'm going to keep all this mechanical linkage because it's already got a pedal, so why the heck not? Something like that. This guy will feed down through the top up here. I'm thinking somewhere around here-ish. You can still get to that. You can still hit the brake pedal. I want to extend this over a little bit. So when your foot's here, you can also reach there, and the gas is probably over here. I've not figured out how to do the gas pedal yet, but I think for now, what I learned is that the clutch from the Bandit fits the handlebars from the Polaris. So what I'm thinking about doing, since this is all rusted and stuff, I think I'm going to chop off the section right here, and I'm going to weld this in under there. That way so clutch has something to mount that's pretty normal onto, and I can take that off if I need to. So I'm going to cut this up and see how that fits in there. So I cut a bit of that off. I shoved it in there. It's quite a tight fit. I think, get this in here just right. You can see that I can use the clutch, full extension. I think that will be fine. So I just finished welding this in, and I just stuck the clutch back on. And look at that. That's fantastic. There's no flex in that. Obviously this isn't tightened on, so I can still swing this around a little bit if I want it angled out a little bit more. But that feels perfect. You can kind of feel, you know, where it actually actuates and stuff. It's pretty heavy spring on there, not gonna lie. Quite pleased with that. So now I have to figure out how the heck is this brake gonna be mounted in here. This is gonna be pushed up. I like it a little bit more over, but there are other things in the way up here. But yeah, I'll get that figured out. So now that the clutch is in, I'm a little bit stumped on how to do the brake and gas for the moment, but I want to do the shifters. And I want to do one shifter right here and the other one right here. 'Cause remember, this is a dual shifter because we have the rear transfer case and we have the motorcycle transmission. And since the connections for the transfer case line up on this side, I want to put that shifter here. And since the motorcycle shifts on the left side, I want to put that shifter here. I just think that makes more sense, even though I'm used to a right-hand shifter, you know, for the main transmission. So I grabbed the old motorcycle linkage and I took off all the extra bits and stuff that were on here. And so what I think I'm gonna do is, this rod's just like 2 or 3 inches too short. So I'm gonna cut it and extend it with some extra rod that I have. And that's gonna connect down here. And this is gonna go up maybe around here-ish, so you can go, you know, 1 neutral, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can switch which way I want this to actually shift and stuff by which side I put the connector on the bottom side down there. So I'm not too worried about getting that the wrong direction. I mainly just want to have it in a good accessible mount. This side's actually pretty darn easy now that I've decided to do it like that. This side that I'm going to struggle with. I originally thought I was going to put it over here with this whole contraption right here to keep it original. It'd realistically be, I think, right down here, but I'd be hitting that rod if I tried to go over. So I think what I'm going to do is mount it as close as I can to this frame here. Maybe down a little bit, so maybe around here. Because I eventually want to have some type of sheathing or trim work over here, so I want to keep that away from there. And this still has enough room that, you know, if I push it over, it will have plenty of room. So yeah, I think I'm right around there. So I'm going to have to do a little bit of chopping of this to get this mount off of there and see how that fits up on here-ish. I got that all cleaned up, chopped off, and now I think this needs to go maybe that far. That might be too far back though, but I'll play around with this and I'll tack it in. So I have the shifter clamped in right now. I have the transfer case shifter just tacked in right now. So this can shift, but it's not screwed in, obviously. And obviously I have to run the cables back and whatnot. So this shifts fine. I don't like how far I have to reach for this, so I'm probably going to extend it out to like here-ish somewhere. Now I noticed something. Notice I can't spin the chain. That's normal. Go down, that should be first, and I think half up. There we go, that's neutral. And that's first, neutral. So using the handway does not take much effort. The issue though is if I put the clutch in, obviously it spins to neutral, I can't get it into gear, and even when it is gear, it is not spinning free, even when the clutch is all the way in. So something is wrong with the clutch. Either the clutch is stuck or my cable is not tensioned enough. And I'm gonna guess that one first, considering it is very loose. So I'm gonna give that a shot of tightening that up. I adjusted the clutch to the point to where even if the clutch pedal is all the way down, there's a little bit of extra because it's at the end of travel of, you know, pushing the pin in. So I think what's happened is that the wet clutch has just gotten stuck, because this is all very simple. Literally, I've done no modification to the clutch system besides where I've actually mounted the clutch. And so I've given it plenty of room to bend. I don't think it's that. So yeah, I just think the clutch is stuck. But for now, let's get this guy moved up here, because I can't unstick the clutch right now, just because I have to get this thing moving around, or at least the engine running. So, you know, I can try and, you know, unstick it. So yeah, I'm just gonna move the shifter, and I'm gonna do that by cutting this linkage rod right here, and, well, putting in some more rod. Now I can mount this where the heck I want. I've got this mounted generally where I like it. Now that should go together like that. So let me weld that up. So that's been extended. You can see that is that extra piece I added right there. Weld there, weld there. So now we get to see if this fits right now. We want to start by screwing that on. Now, right here, I got the steering wheel, right? Oh, that's nice. Yeah, rear steering here. I like that a lot. Okay, so now I just gotta get this finished welding in right here, because it is certainly not in right now. So now we have a shifter here and a shifter here, and the steering wheel will be here. So shift, 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 shift. So now that the front transmission is working great with its shifter, now I want to do the transfer case or the rear transmission linkages. As you can see, here's the old ones. They're all straight. That was because this was all supposed to be tucked into the body. And on the inside, wasn't supposed to be on the outside of your legs, basically. So the issue is, if I connect this straight to here, you know, up to there, this is in your leg room. And as you can see, this one, which connects back there, can't even reach because this is in there. So somehow I need to make sure this is moved over more so this can connect it, you know, more on the outside. And this one needs somehow to get back to there. What I think I'm gonna do is the easy approach. One, this is actually already on a lever arm. So if I unscrew this bolt here, you can see that this is a pivot point here, and this just redirects that angle. So what I want to do is I want to take this out, cut right here, and I want to make this longer. That way, so I'm not changing any of the mechanical advantage that's happening in there, but I can shift this over. So I think that'll fix this arm right here quite nicely. The next one is this guy. Now, because we have this weird kind of angle thing, I don't want to build another push arm thing over here and then angle it back over there. I'm sure I could, but that's a little bit too many ball joints at the beginning here. If I need to do that, I'll do that later. But what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to bend this down a little bit here so it's at an angle, and then I'm going to bend it a little bit back here. It won't be a perfect straight line, but it will be, this is thick enough to not really flex that crazy, I think. So I think I can get away with it if I do it like that. Now, I don't have this exact type of ball joint, but I do have another kind for my senior design project, and that project's going to be in a future video. But still, I have some extra parts from that, so I'm going to give that a shot. Yeah, remember how I said that that little bend wasn't going to cause any issues? Well, that was a lie. Oh, it wasn't intentionally, obviously, but right now I'm in neutral. If I push this back, you can see that moves around a little bit, but you can see from neutral, if I push forward, do you see how that bar kinks in right there? And then pulls out the other way. So yeah, that's not really moving. I mean, obviously it's a little bit. You can see that chain, when I roll it, is not moving. I'm in reverse right now. So that is forward. That chain is also not moving. If I, you know, push that all the way up, that's hot still. Yeah, I can try that. See, now I can get it to click into place, but it's because this thing is kinking. So it looks like I'm gonna have to make another one of those lever mechanisms like there is for this one here. So it looks like I need to start thinking about how I want to make the joint for this one, because that's obviously too much motion just for it to even be there. It tries, but it doesn't successfully make it into gear, unfortunately. Thought I had that one. Ugh, back to the drawing book. So I have two mechanisms here that I've made. One has two Heim joints on it. It has two lock nuts here, two lock nuts there, lock nut here and there. The reason why this one's here is to keep these two pinched together. That was when I add this piece of steel right here that has a hole drilled in it. This will be clamped in there like that. This will be the arm that swings off of one of these other holes that is a pivot point. That way, so I can have one arm that goes to the shifter, one that goes back to the transfer case. And these can swing independently, a little bit up and down, to simple as that. So that's pretty much ready to go. This guy right here is a little different. So threaded rod, 5/16 lock nut, front and rear. This middle one is not. It's a drilled out regular 5/16 nut, and it's been drilled out 5/16, so it runs on here smooth. This will be our pivot point. So probably what I'll do is I'll cut at the edge of one of these holes, and then I'll weld the nut in the hole. That way, so it'll pivot like this, and then this threaded rod can be cut and welded to the frame of the four-wheeler. That way, so this will pivot like this, and these guys can be out here like that. So hopefully that should do what I wanted to do. Well, I have some good news. Last night I did the forward neutral reverse for high range, and then I just now finished low range connect. This was one of the old connecting rods that was in there. I'm no longer using that. So as you can see now, we have those rods going pretty much straight along with the frame, and then they bend off here. And they're not bent down here. I built the dual lever arms that I was talking about last night. So now, if I do that, that is reverse, and then that's high, that is low. So yeah, a little bit stiff. Pretty sure a mixture between that's stiff to move and so is the handle. So that's just kind of how it works out. I don't think that really has to do much with my linkage system, which let's take a look at. I am well aware that this is terrible. I did it in the dark, really, so I'm gonna have to clean this up later. But for now, I just need to make sure it works so I can move on to the next step so I can fix this later. So if I move it into reverse, high, it's neutral, then, oh geez, low range is always so stiff. There we go, low range. So yep, forward, reverse, neutral, low. So, works good enough, like I said. We'll fix it later. Because I want to get to this. Because this is all the new brake pads, so I can finally put those in so I can start doing brake lines. Like I said, it's time to do brakes. I have all brand new brake lines. The rear brake line, the one to the master cylinder, and both front brake lines. The manifold block I am currently still cleaning, but I have the new pads on the rear caliper and new pads on both front ones. So how about let's start by putting the front calipers in. Yep, so they're on. I re-shimmed that one. So this one spins perfectly quiet. This one still got a little bit of something in the back, but doesn't really seem like it can do much about it. So it's just gonna do that just a little bit until it wears in. Here's the brand new brake lines. And realistically, before I didn't have to deal with the axle because, well, caliper was on the back side, where obviously when I go to the back, deal with that. But now I do have to deal with that. This one's bent on both sides. Well, is one supposed to be different than the other? That's okay. Well, that should not be an issue. Yeah, so go slightly upwards, it'll run there. Yeah, and then run back. Just pretend it looks something like that. Obviously, these still need to be tightened, but we'll do that later. Here's the rear caliper. I still have to make that bracket back there, but I do have the stuff for it now. So let's see if this fits. I believe it goes on like that. Okay, so that's on there. So here's the new rear brake line. This little more angled inwards. Jesus, stuff does not like to go where you tell it. Oh my goodness, get on there. I don't have the proper tool to tighten these brake line fittings, so I'm not gonna try and really get them tightened on till I get that. So now this just goes to the front. So I just ran to the store, picked up some of the flare wrenches, tightened those 3 on really tight, and I just finished cleaning up the manifold block. These are like 20 bucks new, so I'm glad I was able to save this one for sure. I guess I'll just have to find a mounting spot and, well, I'll jump probably to them. So, rear brake line, front brakes, there's manifold block. That's not where I want to keep it, but I forgot I also have this new brake line here as well for this master cylinder. That's just a 10 mil banjo bolt. I still have to tighten that on, but this goes to the very top of this. That hole right there used to be a fluid pressure switch, so you would know when the brakes are pressed, so you could do like brake lights and stuff. This one already has a brake light switch right here when you push down, so I think I'm gonna cap that off because I don't have the switch. So I just have to figure out how this is mounted so this doesn't get in the way of our block. I think the block might fit under here somewhere though. There's plenty of room here, but just not enough for really this stuff to go any further. Well, here's that manifold again. So I went to find a plug for this, and this is a banjo bolt, so I can't actually use this, you know, because that screws in there. This is an M10 by 1 thread pitch, and it's straight. It's not tapered. I gave it a good measurement on the bottom and top side of the threads with the calipers, and it is indeed ever so slightly tapered. The closest thread to M10 like this is this type of 1/8 MIP plug. This is tapered, so this should just screw in there. Oh, yeah, very nice and tight. Okay, so now that I have a plug here, I can now put in the rest of this and make a good mount. So if we look down here, I weld a little bracket onto here, and I just have to block a zip tied to it right now. And these are all the connectors, and so all those are tightened down, nice and firm. Like I said, that's zip tied, so it's a little bit wiggly, but I'll get that better later. For now, I want to see if the brakes work, which requires me to bleed the brakes. Since the brake pedal is all mounted in now, and I've swapped out the reservoir, while I've done brakes before, I've never had to fill all the brake lines while they're all completely dry before. You know, I've had to do brakes where there was fluid in there, and, you know, just kind of get the bubbles out and stuff, but never completely dry. So this will be a new experience for me, but I'll get this thing filled up and get that started. Blading these brakes have taken forever. All the fittings are nice and tightened on. I'm not leaking anywhere, at least not anywhere that I can tell. The brake is still spongy. I don't know if that's because that master cylinder is just too small, or whatever the case may be. However though, if I do push it, it does stop it. If I push hard enough, I can overcome it if I like push on it with my foot on the tire. That means that it's probably not good enough braking pressure, especially when I can tell it's still spongy. I swear to God I got all the air out of the lines, but clearly there's something still there. So like I said, either it's too small of a master cylinder or there's still air somewhere that I cannot find. All the calipers have been bled. I don't think there's air in there, but like I said, I could be completely wrong about that. I did zip tie the reservoir up here so it's nice and easy, so I can unscrew the cap here, pour it in right here, makes it all nice and easy. So yeah, so I'm gonna call the brakes good enough right now. At least the brakes don't like squeak really when I roll this around. So good enough for now. I think next what I want to do is probably the chain tensioner, since this stuff is still floppy, so might as well start fabricating that. Okay, so I have this L bracket right here. This is tightened on. That's mostly tightened on, and you can see the chain here, if I roll back a little bit, that we have our chain going all the way around. And then down here, the reason why this isn't on an L is I can tension the chain. Okay, that's loose, that's tighter. I don't have the right spring, but I'm hoping that these two springs right here will hopefully be enough. Well, I just put this one spring on. This spring, not nearly strong enough. Pull down this little lever, just that little bit. That up, see how loose that all gets. Push that down, tightens it right up. So yeah, that works quite nice. Yeah, this thing is just way too loose. I think that looks pretty darn good. I'll have to make an actual mount down here, but I'll do that when I know the actual spring size. So it's about time to get the steering wheel actually on there. So this just arrived today. It's a generic steering wheel for go-karts, about 20 bucks. And also I got a quick disconnect, which is also a 3-hole pattern. And so basically what you do is you just pinch this, and that just falls out, and you put it back in, and you pinch, and it just goes back in. And then this is just a cover that goes there. The quick disconnect came with a handful of screws. However, even though this is a 3-hole pattern, it doesn't actually say the distance, and they're very close to lining up. You probably can't see that. The holes in this are probably a millimeter outwards from center than the hole pattern on this one. Additionally, the screws that just go into here, that just thread on like that, are also screws that don't fit through these holes. So opening these up should make it to where these fit. So I'll drill these out and I will bolt these together. So now these screws fit through the holes, a little snug, but they do go through and they would bolt on like that. However, it is going to be a little bit further than I thought. They are slightly bit outwards still. So either I drill these out to a bigger hole size and just get these through, or I take the Dremel and widen it in that certain direction. So yep, I just finished Dremeling that out about 1/16 of an inch, and well, that fits quite nicely. So I think it's time to see how this fits on the 4-wheeler. So I've been using this wrench this whole time, so I think I can take that off now. And I'm thinking about moving this bearing back a little bit, but let's just see how this fits on there. It should both be 3/4. That fits quite nicely, but I think in terms of knee room, there's plenty, you know, around here. I don't like how far back the shifters are and stuff now. So I think, yeah, I am going to move the bearing back so the steering wheel can be maybe a little bit further back, like here. I wonder. I just flipped the quick disconnect on the inside of the steering wheel. I'm just wondering, how stupid would that look? Now your steering wheel is moved forward. I don't have to shop the bar, and now your hands is much closer because there is this offset in the steering wheel here. So, I mean, ergonomics is actually not that much different. Your hands do get really close to this though. That way, so I also wouldn't have to move the bearing. That'd be nice. It is really close. I don't know. I'm kind of liking that. And your thumbs actually fit on this thing right here. And you can actually grip it. This way, can't really grip it. Look at that. It's just like this way though. You can really grip it. I don't know. I kind of like that. I think for now, I'm going to drill a hole through this guy right here and a hole through this and then bolt it together. And the reason why I want to do that is because then later I can drill other holes in this and I can adjust the position forward and back really easy. So I just drilled all the way through this connector here, through the rod, and bolted it in. There is a little bit of wiggle, so I can't clamp this down to this. I just have a thing that's stopping it from moving around forward and back on it. So once I'm comfortable, I will weld this in. There is backlash considering that this isn't tightened, you know, all the way down, so I am probably gonna have to weld that on there if I like the distance of this. This right here is also not tightened down, so this wobbles around a little bit on that, and given that bearing has a little bit of slop in it too. There's 2 double U-joints and a single U-joint down there, so there's 5 total U-joints from this to the actual steering box. And that's how much wiggle there is total. And I would say that's perfectly acceptable for that many U-joints. So the fact that this is there makes it seem like that is a lot. Which realistically, that's all of it combined with these being loose, that being loose, and the 5 U-joints, and the bearing block not being mounted. But yeah, no, it fits really nice. Considering this is a 10-inch steering wheel, I have no issue scrubbing those tires. Steer, steer, shift, steer, shift, steer, shift, shift. So we got the steering wheel on, we got the chain tensioner on, we made the drive shaft cover, we cleaned and fixed the front and rear calipers, we put new brake pads in, we bled the lines, maybe not completely, but we bled the lines to the master cylinder, and we put the master cylinder in, so we have a brake pedal. We have a clutch pedal, that's all mounted in. We have our motorcycle transmission shifter, and we have our transfer case shifter in as well. So we have 6 gears on the motorcycle transmission, and we have a forward low and forward high on the rear transmission, so we have 6 times 2, so we technically have 12 forward gears. That is all manual. I think that's quite a bit of work that we got done in this video. So what's next is to replace the bearing in that wheel, replace the rear shocks, obviously put electronics in, because if it wants to drive, we need electronics. I have ordered the exhaust stuff, so I have to modify the front manifold, put in new tubing that goes underneath, and I think I can reuse the old muffler, but I need to put it into a different spot, so I have to make muffler mounts and all that fun stuff, and then I think it'll be ready to be driven. But that will be hopefully in next video or 2, depending on how much I can get done. Obviously this was a very, very packed video, and then after that I'll have to, fix a little bit of the other things, like make a chain guard on both sides, actually make sure that the steering wheel is a little bit tighter, because right now everything is loose. I found out that one of the U-joints actually isn't screwed in the front, and that's got a bunch of slop in it. After this thing is driving, we can start putting in some plastics and everything, because I have some fun plans for that. If you have a guess or an idea of what body shape this thing should have for plastics and whatnot, I am open to hearing them, because I have an idea. So we have a little bit of trunk space, bed space back here, and we need something that has the engine maybe pop out of the hood, a little something, because I have some ideas, because we need to make fenders for this, and I don't know, just make it look a little nicer, because this metal framing is not the greatest and nothing is welded together. So once that's welded, we can start headed on to some of that fun extra stuff. Anyway, thank you for watching this video. I'm very excited about how much we got done, and there's plenty more to get done.